I hereby call this meeting of the Washington Metro Rail Safety Commission to order. This meeting is being recorded as well as streamed live for the public. Ms. Silbaugh, do we have a quorum today?
We do, Chair, have a quorum. Participating in the meeting today are yourself as Chair, Vice Chair Lobby, Commissioners Rouse, Drummer, and Higgins. Commissioner Higgins is a voting member today, and we are shortly anticipating being joined by Commissioners Bob and Belsack. But with the participants currently, we do have a quorum.
Thank you, Ms. Silbaugh. Now we will turn to our safety message from Mr. Braxton. Mr. Braxton?
Thank you, Chair Hart. As the year winds down, let's keep safety a top priority. Shorter days and colder weather can increase risk so stay alert. When driving, watch for icy roads and allow extra time for travel. Ensure your vehicle is winter ready with proper tires and emergency supplies. Indoors, check that heating systems are functioning safely and keep flammable items away from heat sources and always keep candles away from combustible materials. If decorating outside for the holidays, use lights and extension cords rated for outdoor use and never overload outlets. Practice ladder safety when hanging decorations. Always maintain 3 points of contact. Finally, take care of yourself, dress warmly, stay hydrated, and watch for signs of fatigue. A safe December means a joyful holiday season for everyone. Thank you, and that concludes the safety message.
Thank you, Mr. Braxton. We'll now move on to the minutes from our last meeting. The Secretary Treasurer is unable to join us so far in this meeting, in the beginning of this meeting, so I will present the minutes for a vote. The minutes of the October 21st, 2025 meeting were posted for review. Are there any corrections or additions to the minutes? Hearing none, I move approval of the October 21st, 2025 minutes as circulated. Is there a second? Is there a motion? That's me. And is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. So I move approval of this October 21st, 2025 minutes as corrected just now. Is there, excuse me, I'm sorry, I'm wrong place on the script, sorry. I move approval of the October 21st. I already did that. Is there a second? We did that. Commissioner, we've had a second from one of the commissioners. And now all those in favor, please raise your hand and say yay.
Yay.
Yay. Any opposed? Please raise your hand and say nay.
Chair, the vote is unanimous, 5 yeas, 0 nays. The minutes are adopted as presented.
Okay, thank you. And you see my inexperience at doing this, so sorry I messed it up a little bit, but we got all's well that ends well. Public comments. We will provide an opportunity for public comments at each of our meetings. To ensure that we recognize all who wish to speak, we provided an opportunity for those who have joined the Zoom meeting to sign up in the chat box. If you wish to speak but did not sign in, please do so now. I would also remind everyone, including those of you watching on YouTube, that you can always report any safety concerns through our website, WMSC.gov, through our social media channels, or by email. Ms. Miner, do we have anyone who has indicated that they would like to speak today?
No, Chair Hart, there are no names in the chat.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Miner. We will now continue with the next agenda item, which is my remarks. I'll start with acknowledging the service of one of the original commissioners and long-serving Secretary Treasurer, Deborah Farrar Dyke. She was appointed in 2017 and was part of the original lineup of officers of the commission. The initial commissioners formed the selection committee for WMSC's first chief executive officer and developed the initial commission policies and bylaws. In 2018, she began her service as the Secretary Treasurer, which continued through October of this year, 2025. With her guidance and oversight, the WMSC has requested and received FTA grant funding and clean audits consistently. Her insights during work sessions and public meetings were invaluable. The commission will miss her service, and I personally will miss her as a colleague. But now Deborah has the opportunity to pursue some of her other interests, and we wish her the very best in doing so. Next, in the Congratulations Department, congratulations and welcome to Commissioner Don Drummer. Maryland Governor Moore appointed Commissioner Drummer in November for a member term through August of 2029. Commissioner Drummer is a retired U.S. Army colonel, which he followed with senior leadership roles at several federal government agencies and appointments on both the Washington Suburban Transit Commission and the Washington Metropolitan Area Transit Authority. His dedication to service is clear, and I look forward to his contributions to our commission. In this line, I would also like to note what I have frequently said is that I owe a huge debt of gratitude to the political leaders in the 3 area jurisdictions, Maryland, Virginia, DC, for putting people on this board who have substantive capability to help with the board and not just political buddies. And so without fail, they have given us people that have given us a very robust leadership group, and it's made my job easier because they are so good at what they do. One more round of congratulations, and that is to Commissioner Conklin, who now we will address as Secretary Treasurer Conklin. According to our bylaws, with Commissioner Farrar-Dyke's resignation, the commission needed to elect another to complete her term. Among the eligible commissioners to finish the current term as Secretary Treasurer, Commissioner Conklin expressed his interest. The commissioners participated in a written vote, which was able to open and close because of the full participation on November 21st. The votes unanimously support Commissioner Conklin as our new Secretary Treasurer. Congratulations again, Commissioner Conklin, and we look forward to working with you in this capacity. As a reminder, the entire slate of officer roles will be voted on in March 2026. We will discuss the voting process in the new year. Next, our meeting today includes updates on the WMSC's ongoing safety oversight activities and the actions that we take on a daily basis to help ensure that Metro Rail upholds its safety commitments and strives to continuously improve the safety of its system. I appreciate the ongoing and frequent communications and coordination that the WMSC staff conducts with Metro Rail at all levels of both organizations. This includes the ongoing work related to audits and corrective action plans, safety certification, investigations, and inspections. Dr. Meyer, do you have any additional opening comments for this afternoon's meeting?
Yes, thank you. Excuse me, Chair Hart, I do have some updates. We continue to have productive interactions with Metro Rail as we work together to identify and address a variety of safety issues. One example is the work that led to the WMSC approval of the WMATA Roadway Worker Protection Program on December 1st. Over the course of this year, I updated you on WMSC activities to meet our federal regulatory obligation of overseeing WMATA's work, leading to an RWP program that meets the federal requirements, and then to approve the compliant program in advance of the December 2nd deadline. This was accomplished through a disciplined, dedicated approach involving both of our organizations as we discussed ideas, issues, and solutions. The WMSC oversaw WMATA's assembly of the necessary program components and provided feedback that led to WMATA modifying certain parts of the draft program until it met the regulatory requirements, and we were able to provide our approval. Working together, we achieved this regulatory milestone of program approval, and my sincere thanks to everyone from both organizations who worked on this effort. The FTA regulation requires both achieving an approved program and implementing it. Metro Rail has not begun yet operating under its newly approved RWP program. On December 2nd, WMATA General Manager and CEO Randy Clark sent a letter to me recognizing the approval of WMATA's RWP program and its need to launch the program. The letter includes an implementation proposal that WMSC staff are reviewing, and we will respond to WMATA very soon. The WMSC remains available to provide feedback as Metro Rail begins and completes training its transit workers on this newly approved program. As required by regulation, earlier this year, the WMSC updated its program standard to reflect our methods of overseeing the execution of the RWP program, including annually auditing the program to assess its completeness and effectiveness. We updated and shared our triennial audit schedule with WMATA to reflect these annual RWP audits, the first of which occurred in June 2025. Going forward, the WMSC is prepared to review and approve annual updates to the RWP program. With the continued shared commitment of both our organizations, WMATA's RWP program will only continually improve. Another milestone was achieved on December 5th. The WMSC provided its concurrence for Metrorail to activate a single rail traffic controller staffing configuration at the Control Center Operations desk that controls the Metrorail territory for all points west of Courthouse Station on the Orange Line and the Silver Line. Later in the meeting, Paul Smith will provide additional details on the project and how we reached our decision. Up to this consolidation project, all of Metrorail's control center desks have been staffed by 2 controllers. Metro had initially planned to activate this change in March 2026, but then accelerated that timeline to December 2025. The WMSC aligned our work to meet Metro's accelerated timeline, which is an example of our collaborative approach to safety oversight. Finally, it's been a year since the WMSC inspections program was revamped by adding risk-based inspections to our inspection toolbox. During the year, the WMSC completed 78 inspections. These inspections cover topics as varied as roadway worker protection practices, rail operations control center activities, train operator certification, safety features in train car wash locations, rail car tool calibration, train control rooms, track and wayside infrastructure, and safety on station platforms. All of these inspection reports are available on the WMSC's public website. These inspections provide the WMSC an up-to-date and direct awareness of Metro Rail operations, maintenance, and training practices, as well as the condition of the infrastructure. Metrorail has provided our inspection reports so that it can take the necessary actions to resolve defects found during our inspections, which we may then verify with follow-up inspections. For example, when our inspectors found that wash alarms at the New Carrollton train yard car wash were not functioning, emergency exit doors wedged open or broken, and illegible signage warning personnel of moving trains, our inspection report advised Metrorail of these hazards, and Metrorail confirmed that it had fixed the safety issues, and we conducted a follow-up inspection a few months later and confirmed that the defects remained fixed. As another example, during a day of inspecting 4 train control rooms, we found storage of hazardous materials, inappropriate storage of vital train control equipment, and outdated RWP materials. Metrorail responded to the inspection finding by properly storing the hazardous materials, moving the vital equipment to a proper storage location, and issuing a staff memo reinforcing proper storage practices in these train control rooms. As our revamped inspection program turns 1 year old, I just wanted to make you aware of successes like these. This concludes my remarks.
Thank you, Dr. Meyer. Are there any questions from the commissioners for Dr. Meyer?
See no hands raised, Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Silbaugh. We will now move on to our next item, which is audits, with an update from Mr. O'Donnell and Ms. Rhodes. Mr. O'Donnell and Ms. Rhodes, the floor is yours.
All right. Thank you, Chair Hart. The WMSC is in the process of completing our 3rd triennial cycle of audits. Each of these audits examines Metrorail's compliance with its Public Transportation Agency Safety Plan and the associated requirements. This occurs on an ongoing basis over a 3-year period, which means at any given time, several audits are occurring, but at different stages in the audit process. I will provide an update on 1 completed audit and the audits underway. First, I have to report that the 2024 Fitness for Duty and Occupational Health Programs audit has not progressed. WMATA has not responded to the WMSC's initial request when WMATA believes that worker safety information is responsive to that request. The WMSC is seeking relief through the enforcement of its subpoena for this information.
In our last published audit, the Communication Systems audit, we highlighted 4 positive practices, 4 findings, and 2 recommendations. John, could you first go through the positive practices and then the audit findings and recommendations?
Yes, for the positives, we noted that all personnel interviewed indicated sufficient provision of personal protective equipment. The second, during on-site audit observations, all equipment was pre-checked before use, and no equipment was seen in use out of calibration. The third positive is that communications and signaling training personnel initiated a training request email inbox in which anyone from the department could suggest training topics or options for training. And the fourth is that communications and signaling have consolidated many of its existing procedures for preventative and corrective maintenance into one document titled COM 1000.
And now for the findings. John?
Yes, finding one identified communication personnel are not consistently completing preventive maintenance on its public address and radio communication systems in accordance with Metrorail's procedures. As part of this audit, WMSC personnel conducted observations of 3 preventive maintenance activities. During the first 2 observations, we witnessed preventive maintenance of station public address systems. While conducting this maintenance, the technicians are to take sound level measurements using a sound meter to ensure proper functionality throughout the station. However, no such measuring equipment was brought or used to complete the requisite steps. Maximo records for each of these preventive maintenance activities showed that all the required steps were completed, even though they were not. A third observation was conducted on alignment procedures for the comprehensive radio communication systems bidirectional amplifiers. Personnel adhered to most of the procedures for this in PMI. However, the procedures required that the technicians print data sheets to use in the field to ensure that all required measurements are properly captured. However, that step was not followed.
Next up, finding 2 identified Metrorail does not have adequate supervisory oversight to ensure adherence to testing and replacement requirements for electrical safety gloves. The WMSC observed a preventive maintenance between Metro Center Station and DuPont Circle Station. Prior to heading into the field, WMSC personnel met with communications personnel at the Carmen Turner facility. While personnel were gathering tools and personal protective equipment to head to Metro Center Station, WMSC personnel checked the electrical safety gloves of all personnel involved with the day's planned preventive maintenance. The gloves provided by 2 Metrorail personnel were expired. One set of gloves expired on March 26, 2023. The other set of gloves was dated as expiring on March 10, 2025. In total, the WMSC found 6 pairs of gloves, which were removed and quarantined to the supervisor's office. Safety gloves have been a perennial challenge for Metro, as this has been identified in multiple WMSC inspections over the years as well. We are hopeful the forthcoming corrective action plan to address this finding will finally resolve this safety issue.
Switching to finding number 3 of the audit, that identified Metrorail rooms that contain communication systems equipment are not maintained in accordance with Metrorail policy to ensure an optimal environment for those vital systems. The WMSC personnel conducted observations of several of these rooms on April 18th, including a maintenance room, not a communications room, at Grosvenor Strathmore Station that contained vital communication systems equipment in a room that had active water leaks and corroded HVAC equipment. WMATA has another CAP, C0222, which addresses a finding that Metrorail communication systems rooms have signs of recurring water, dirt, and dust intrusion. This CAP remains open and in progress with 80% completion to date. The CAP is scheduled to be considered for closure at the end of April 2026.
Finding 4 identified that Metrorail is not maintaining its self-assessed staffing levels required to maintain its current communication systems. Metrorail's current staffing assessment for its communications portion of the Communications and Signaling Department states that its assets have increased by 36%. However, personnel levels have not risen proportionally. Metrorail's own assessment stated that the current staff assignment does not meet the need of support requirements at all WMATA locations, along with prioritized emergency response time. The staffing assessment also did not consider review of recruiting and retention practices as required by the related maintenance control procedure. That concludes the report's findings. John and I will now pause for questions, if there are any, before proceeding to the 2 recommendations.
The Vice Chair has his hand raised.
Thank you. I just have a couple of questions. Does Metro actually have sound level equipment equipment? And if they do have it, how do they use it in uh, inspecting, communication systems?
So thank you for your question, Vice Chair Lobby. I am not sure if they have the equipment. They must have the equipment if they wrote a procedure around it. But from the activities that we saw, it wasn't in use where it should have been. They were simply, using their ears to see if they could hear, not actually checking any sort of measurements as the procedure required.
So we don't know whether they even have the equipment to use then.
We did
Is that
not
correct?
see it in use at what we witnessed. No.
Although this equipment is readily available, and roughly a decade ago, the FTA was focused on hearing conservation for train operators, and Metro developed a program to address that, and that would have involved not just hiring a competent safety specialist as they did back then, but also procuring appropriate equipment for audiology purposes. So whether they have the specific equipment for use in stations, or we just didn't happen to see it on the days that we visited, I don't know. However, the equipment certainly could be made available.
How do they use the sound level equipment in the station? Do they go a certain distance from the speakers or what?
Yeah, that's correct. You're supposed to go a certain distance away from the speakers, take the measurements, record the data, and there's various positions outlined in the procedure to go throughout the station to take measurements.
Okay, and when you talk about communications, that's a very, very broad subject. The audit, did it concentrate on stations and public announcements and stations, but did it also include onboard announcements? Meaning the quality of the communication systems on board the trains?
That's not something we looked at in this audit. I believe that's something that we'll look at in our next audit, which is the rail car audit that starts in January.
Okay, so that's included in a different audit then.
Right.
Finally, looking at these communications equipment rooms, I know that we've had issues with the train control equipment rooms before. Are these the same rooms or are these separate rooms?
These are typically, from what we saw, they could be separate rooms. Sometimes they're the same. It depends on the station, I believe, where they're storing the equipment.
Well, looking at that one picture, that's somewhat shocking. The rust coming down from the air handling system, and I think there's even a rusticle there hanging down.
Yeah.
You know if that's a combined room with train
No,
control?
that is specifically a maintenance room which they had used to store communications equipment.
Okay.
It was not a train control room.
Okay. Thank you very much. That's all the
course.
questions I have.
And Commissioner Rouse has his hand raised.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
We
I
can.
didn't do an audio. So a couple comments and a couple questions, but first, on the findings, the positive notes that you made, I want to call out this training topics inbox. I was just with another property, and the question came up with the trainers is, how do you know if your training program is effective, and how do you get that feedback loop? Because it's kind of critical, and especially with new employees and younger employees, they may be reluctant to tell you that they didn't understand something or they didn't really get it the first time around. So I thought that was a great idea. I actually might propose that for somebody else, because you do need that feedback. You need to know if your folks are understanding that before you go release them to start doing things. And so many issues that we have can be attributed back to poor training, or in cases of like we just talked about, maybe the training is good, but they just missed it, and they get out there and they really didn't understand the procedure or how to do something. So I thought that was great. Now, talking about procedures, though, I do think your one finding, I don't know if it was finding number one here. Let's see. Yeah, finding one. This is a critical one for me, not only for this audit in particular, but anything else that you're looking at, is this following procedures. We see it a lot, right? And it's one of those small things can lead to bigger things. When people skip procedures because they've done it forever, they think they know it, it causes problems. And so I think that's an important finding to track, not only for this again, but for other activities as well, because yeah, how did you complete the procedure if you didn't have the equipment? And was there I don't know if anybody from the audit was there, but was there like a pre-brief before the work was performed, and did they discuss anything about the procedure?
Uh, Thank you, Commissioner Rouse. They did have the procedure. They were aware of it. They were just skipping certain steps and not using equipment. I think what you talked about, maybe the drift from just understanding it and doing it every day, they just got so far away from where the actual procedure says to just, well, can you hear it? It's fine, you know, but that's not what the procedure says to do. So that was the really the crux of the issue there.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good finding
Mhm.
because it can lead to issues. I get it. It's easy.
Sure.
You do these things all the time,
Hmm.
but when you're doing something, especially safety critical, like a wheel inspection, it's so easy just to get distracted because somebody asks you a question, and then you go back to doing your inspections, and you may have just missed that wheel altogether if there's not,
Hmm.
forcing you to follow that procedure. And I think your paperwork comment as well, right? The data sheets
Hmm.
kind of help attribute to that to make sure they're going through the process the right
Hmm.
way,
Yeah.
and not just this is somewhat adjacent, but for anything else you're looking at, if it's a test or inspection, having a relevant recording rather than just pass fail checks, right?
Yeah.
Because that also leads to what Commissioner Lobby and I would call pencil whipping, when people go back and just fill out the forms after they do it. And that doesn't help you if there is a problem. You're trying to go back and say, okay, when did the problem first start? How
Hmm.
was it?
Hmm.
Was there enough? Was the brake working before the train left the facility or not? So I thank you for that one.
Hmm.
The one last question here is on the staffing issue. And I guess my question is there a maintenance schedule or something that both WMATA and we can kind of fall back on to see if this staffing issue is becoming a problem in terms of trying to get the preventative maintenance work done? Is there anything that we're looking at there in terms of tracking this issue and making sure it doesn't become a problem for maintenance?
I would say that that's something that we'll have to look at in the CAP process to understand, you know, how they're tracking this, what they're looking at. Um, but yeah, that's something that we're definitely going to keep aware of and look at. But yeah.
Okay, yeah, I just it perked my ears up when you mentioned this in the findings, and I was like, let's make sure that doesn't blow down to
Hmm.
issues later on, right?
Yeah, of course, and
That's all I
that's
have. Sorry.
I see no other hands raised, Chair.
Thank you. John, you want to continue?
okay. We'll go through the recommendations now. Recommendation 1 suggests that Metro Rail should review how it deploys and safeguards vital communications equipment. In locations throughout the Metro Rail systems, there are stations in which communication systems equipment is accessible without tools or other protective measures. Stations have equipment including bidirectional amplifiers and associated cabling that are only secured by an in gate, which is not locked. Although marked as closed off to the public, the areas are still accessible. And switching to the final recommendation, recommendation 2 suggests that Metrorail should review the maintenance tasks related to its communication systems and ensure that all personnel have the necessary equipment to complete them. During the observation on April 17th, as previously discussed, Metro personnel were in the process of conducting their preventive maintenance when they experienced difficulties with some of the equipment. This communications equipment and the related cabling were on or near the ceiling of the communications room. Metro personnel did not have a ladder with them to conduct the necessary repairs. Metrorail personnel assigned to conduct these maintenance activities do not carry or take ladders with them. However, the preventive maintenance SOP requires that technicians do visual checks on ceiling, canopy, and pylon speakers. Personnel at the May 15th observation did not have all the tools, a ladder, required to perform the entirety of the tasks that were assigned to complete. That concludes this discussion on the Communication Systems Audit Report. Are there any additional questions from the commissioners on the recommendations before we move on to the remaining audits?
I see no hands.
Thank you. In that case, please, Ashley, would you proceed to the next step?
Yes, thank you. And thank you, John. We have 2 audits for which the exit conferences have been completed and the reports are underway. Could you go through each of those, John?
Yes, for the track structures and roadway worker protection audit, the draft report is in the final internal review stages and is expected to be sent to Metrorail in January. Metrorail will then have 30 days, as described in the WMSC program standard, to review and provide comments on the draft. Once those comments are received back, we will review them and consider each comment provided. The next draft that is underway is the audit of Metrorail's internal safety review and internal reviews programs. We held an exit conference for that audit on November 6th. Additional information was provided by Metrorail on November 14th. We conducted an additional interview at the request of Metro on November 20th. We also received additional feedback from Metro and are considering that as we finalize our draft report. We expect to send the draft of this report to Metrorail for review in late January.
We have also started work on the next audit, which will cover both revenue vehicles, or Class 1 vehicles, and roadway maintenance machines, or Class 2 vehicles. John, can you update us on where that audit stands?
Yes, for that audit, we sent the notification and initial request to Metrorail on November 28th. The documents are expected to be received back by December 29th. From there, we will begin our document review and begin conducting the interviews and observations we expect in late January, continuing into February. Thank you. That completes the audit presentation.
Thank you, Mr. O'Donnell and Ms. Rhodes. Are there any questions from the commissioners for Mr. O'Donnell or Ms. Rhodes?
I see no hands, Chair.
Thank you. Next item is corrective action plans, CAPS. We will now take up the next agenda item with an update with Ms. Rhodes, from Ms. Rhodes, Mr. O'Donnell, and Mr. DiRenzo.
Thank you, Chair Hart. We currently have 75 open corrective action plans with 17 in development or not yet received. For the 17 CAPs in development or not yet received, 2 CAPs are from our Control Center and Rail Operations Audit, 8 are from the Elevators and Escalators Audit, and 6 are from the just issued Communication Systems Audit. For the elevator and escalators draft CAPs, comments were provided back to Metrorail on the first drafts on November 24th, and a second round of revised drafts were received by the WMSC on December 8th. These draft CAPs are currently under WMSC review.
Each of these CAPs has milestones that are called actionable items. Metrorail submits those actionable items on an agreed upon schedule established by the approved CAP. In practice, this means that the WMSC receives actionable items every week on a subset of CAPs. WMSC personnel are assigned to review these submittals as they are received, including review by subject matter experts. When all of the actionable items of a CAP have been completed, Metrorail submits the CAP for closure review. For closure review, the WMSC looks again at each submitted actionable item collectively alongside an overall review of the finding and minimum corrective action to assure that the CAP has achieved its goals. Today, we have 3 CAPs to report on that have reached the final closure milestone since our last public meeting, each of which constitutes a completed safety improvement. Ms. Rhodes, can you start our discussion of closed CAPs with CAP 266?
Yes, C266 addressed a finding regarding power facility egress paths. WMSC personnel identified several immediate safety concerns during the 2024 power audit, 3 of which were regarding exit pathways, including an exit door unable to be opened, corroding exit doors, lighting issues, and water intrusion issues.
And how did Metro address these via the CAP?
Metrorail created a new monthly inspection process for power department supervisors to evaluate egress path and exit door functionality, including providing evidence of training of personnel on this new requirement. As evidence of implementation, Metrorail submitted multiple months of completed inspection records for WMSC review. These checks include evaluation of egress pathways, ensuring they are free from obstructions, evaluation of entry and exit doors, lighting, fire extinguishers, first aid kits, and communication equipment.
As with other CAPs, we will continue to check back on this issue during future audits and inspections. Moving to the next CAP, Ashley, can you provide background on CAP C0274?
C274 addressed a finding that Metro was not following its operational certification requirements for car maintenance road mechanics. I will now ask John Dorenzo to provide background and understanding on road mechanics.
Thanks, Ashley. Metrorail has personnel it designates as road mechanics who are tasked with diagnosing railcar issues in real time while trains are in service. At the time of the audit, Metrorail certified road mechanics to operate trains. However, during certification, road mechanics were not directed to complete baseline train operation proficiency requirements, such as demonstrating the ability to operate on mainline tracks, the ability to properly select routes, or the ability to conduct an environmental system shutdown in a timely manner. This last one is required in the event of a smoke or fire to protect personnel and passengers on the train. Metrorail confirmed that at the time, road mechanics were supposed to meet all proficiency requirements to operate a train, and that road mechanics are required to be certified using the same process as any other personnel who are authorized to operate trains on the main line.
To address this issue, Metrorail changed its policy so that now road mechanics cannot operate rail vehicles on the main line. This has also been updated in the Metrorail Operating Rulebook. Metrorail also created additional tools to track road mechanic training, including a tracking matrix. This training is tracked on a monthly basis to ensure continued compliance by supervisory personnel.
Thank you, Ashley and John, for that. The next CAP is C0276, which also resulted from the 2024 audit of revenue vehicles. Ashley?
C276 addressed the finding that Metrorail was using equipment not calibrated in accordance with its policies and procedures, including for inspection and maintenance of components. Calibration of equipment is required to ensure measurement and tool accuracy. For example, torque wrenches are calibrated to ensure that when utilized, equipment is secured to the correct torque value. For this, I will ask for Mr. Dorenzo to again provide some context. John?
Sure, Ashley. During the 2024 revenue vehicles audit, we found equipment in use at the Greenbelt Rail Yard that was out of calibration. From there, we requested calibration records more broadly. Metrorail provided its calibrated items database that showed some items past due for calibration and many other items within calibration requirements. The past due items included power supplies, multimeters, torque wrenches, calipers, load cells, gauges, and bench test equipment ranging in calibration due dates from 2018 to 2023.
To address this, the Office of Car Maintenance made updates to its tool calibration process, which included aligning all equipment and tool calibration into one SOP, updating the electronic repository and storage requirements for calibration certificates, and updating supervisory requirements to include calibration checks. For this CAP, we reviewed the records provided and also conducted a field verification. John Dorenzo, can you talk more about that field visit?
Sure. WMSC personnel visited the New Carrollton Service and Inspection Shop to verify that tools present were appropriately calibrated. We sampled 20 tools, including gauges and other measurement tools. All were found to be calibrated appropriately. The records also show the improvements to the calibration system.
Thank you, Ashley and John. As our next audit is in this area of revenue vehicles and roadway maintenance machine, which commences in January, we will review this again at that time to ensure that the mitigations put into place for this CAP 0276 are functioning as intended. That completes the CAP presentation. Thank you.
The
Thank
vice
you.
chair has raised his hand.
Say again.
The vice chair has raised his hand.
Okay, please, Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chair Hart. Just excuse me, just a question on calibration. Does Metro have like a quality control department or a clearinghouse to take care of all these issues with calibration and quality of a variety of things? I'm used to organizations where the quality control department makes sure that everything is calibrated and available for whoever it is, the mechanics or people that have to do sound measurements on communications. That's another area that needs to be calibrated. Is there a central clearinghouse at Metro to take care of all this, or is it just department by department?
Thank you for your question, Vice Chair Labby. As mentioned in our summary of the closure of that CAP related to equipment calibration, there was a streamlined SOP created in that CAP, which does define different responsibilities. I can check for you specifically what office is responsible for which item. At the top of my head at this time, I'm not certain what office is responsible for that, but I will pause and see if John Dorenzo might be more familiar than I am at this time.
I'm not familiar. I know that car maintenance has their own type of control of it, but I'm not sure if there's a centralized version.
There's
Thank
not
you.
a centralized authority wide, Commissioner Lobby. Some departments even outsource some of their calibration efforts to contractors.
So there's not one person you can call if you have a tool that's out of calibration. You have to go through your own organization in order to get it done, I guess.
Yeah, it would be within the department vertical. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And
Thank you.
Commissioner Rouse has raised his hand.
Thank you, Commissioner Rouse.
Yeah, thanks. I think, on the one cap for addressing the operator's mechanical and limiting the scope of what they're certified on, if you will, for being an operator, I think that's the right thing. We've seen that before where, especially if you're not actually operating on the main line and utilizing those skills, to spend so much time teaching you about operating rules for the main line, it sometimes takes away from the unique aspect of their job, where they want to focus on things like going through a switch that's lined the wrong way, passing some of these small signals that are out there. So it helps them focus, I think. So I think that's a good thing. On the caps in general, I think we've had a lot of discussions the past couple of years now about measuring success and safety. And I think one thing, I guess, question from my side is, and I may have asked this at another meeting, so forgive me if I did, but do we have a dashboard of some sort, the internal dashboard that the team is using in terms of tracking not only caps, but probably more importantly, John, what you mentioned, and that's the actionable items versus the established schedule that we agreed on. Is there something like that?
Yeah, thank you for your question, Commissioner Rouse. We have, for the last somewhere between 2 and 3 years, used a data tracking sheet in a tool called Smart Sheets to track at great detail items regarding caps, and also specifically the actionable items, including dates that they're due. And that way it's easy for us to ensure that WMATA is delivering items in accordance with the timeline that they committed to and the agreed upon cap. In terms of a higher level dashboard type view, Davis, I'm curious if you or Tom want to mention any of that in this meeting. I know that that's a different view that is in earlier stages as an organization.
Yeah, so we are working to create other dashboards that basically using what Smartsheet is already tracking to make it more trendable. But we track everything that you're saying right now. It just takes a few more clicks than maybe a dashboard would prevent.
Okay, yeah, and my thinking is for something like this, when we talk about caps, to kind of get that data out in front in terms of what you're seeing and where you're worried about in terms of trends. Especially because, to me, the utility is kind of, as you've heard me talk about in previous meetings, I'm struggling to get the utility sometimes when we just see 74 and then we see 3 closed with 17 added. But it seems like more of the issue is the actionable items and this, whether or not they're on course to address those actionable items in a reasonable time. And so I'm just trying to think of ideas as we have this discussion as an organization about tracking these types of things. Is that of value to put up when we have these CAPS discussions? And okay, here's the CAPS we're going to talk about today, but overall, this is what we're seeing, and we're either trending in the right direction or the wrong direction. So I'm just thinking out loud here, and I want
Yeah, and we do monitor those timeline trends. So which caps are late, which ones have had modification requests or extensions granted rather. So we're tracking all those things too. We there's times where the number goes up and down, right, as far as a trend level, as far as the number. There's periods for whatever reason that seem to get more modification requests than others, but we do watch it, and it is something that we spend a lot of time talking with Metro about, frankly.
I think as a bottom line, and I think your question or your comments is a very good one, Commissioner Rouse, because it can inform where we go in the future with regard to what data that we're either making public or sharing during these meetings or in other venues with commissioners. I would say that we're in a really good place about tracking and making that information or exposing that information to the staff specialists who swim in those lanes every day. Where we've got more work to do is exposing that information to the rest of the organization, to commissioners, and maybe even eventually the public.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, commissioners, for your questions, and thank you, Mr. O'Donnell and Mrs. Rhodes and Mr. Dorenzo. Are there any further questions from the commissioners before we move on?
I see no other hands, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Silbaugh. In that case, we will now hear updates on the WMSC Safety Certification Oversight Program from the WMSC Director, Systems Engineering, Mr. Smith. Mr. Smith, can you provide that update?
Thank you, Chair Hart. I have several updates. When it comes to safety certification oversight, our work is twofold. First, it is having an awareness and understanding of the array of Metro Rail projects that are presently undergoing WMATA safety certification. And second, it is our in-depth review of selected projects. As the effort suggests, our comprehensive review of select projects lasts through all stages of Metro Rail's safety certification process. When we identify a Metro Rail project for an in-depth review, Metro Rail may not start that revenue use of that project until after the WMSC provides concurrence that Metro Rail has adhered to its own safety certification requirements for that project. Metro Rail's safety certification requirements are spelled out in WMATA's Safety and Security Certification Program Plan. We have conducted such in-depth reviews of Silver Line Phase 2, Potomac Yard Station, automatic door operations, and automatic train operations. Each of those projects has received WMSC concurrence and are in use today. Regardless of the project size, the introduction of changes to the system, even seemingly small changes, poses the opportunity for significant system-wide risk through unidentified safety consequences. Safety certification is the best way to foresee such risks and mitigate them. Although safety certification is WMATA's responsibility, it is the WMSC's role to verify that WMATA conducted its safety certification as specified in its own internal written procedures. We accomplish this through document trails, conversations, meetings, and firsthand verification. I will start with Automatic Train Operation Project, or ATO. The WMSC has overseen the safety certification of this initiative since at least 2022. We concurred on ATO activation as WMATA completed its safety certification work on each Metro Rail line. Upon activation of ATO on Metro Rail, there was an unexpected increase in station overruns. A station overrun occurs when a passenger train making a scheduled station stop fails to stop within the station platform limits at the 8-car marker and is unable to service the platform. There are safety risks associated with station overruns, most consequentially, roadway workers being struck by the train or rail equipment being struck. But failing to service the platform also could result in passengers being unable to safely evacuate the train to the platform during an emergency, or law enforcement personnel being unable to board these trains to conduct their activities. The safety risks associated with station overruns prompted WMSC to require system-wide actions, and station-specific mitigations. When WMATA requested ATO activation on the green and yellow line, the WMSC concurred after verifying substantial work efforts underway to mitigate station overruns. This resulted in fewer overruns than those experienced on the red line during initial activation. Both WMATA and the WMSC continue to monitor stopping accuracy and are investigating persistent challenges at specific stations while analyzing system-wide performance trends with a focus on identifying and preventing station overruns in ATO. To evaluate station overruns, WMATA downloads the vehicle data from each station overrun that occurs daily, and these downloads are analyzed to determine if the rail car, wayside, or train operator performance led to each station overrun. Based on that determination, WMATA is able to address the causes of station overruns incrementally from personnel training to engineering modifications of the rail cars and/or wayside equipment. On this slide, it shows the top 15 stations with the highest number of overruns during the 90-day period from September 9th to December 8th. These same stations are among the list of stations that WMATA is evaluating, implementing corrections, and monitoring their effect. The WMSC will continue to monitor performance data until station overrun mitigations are fully implemented and station overruns show a sustained downward trend. In 2020, Metrorail awarded the 8000 series railcar contract to Hitachi Rail US. The purchase of these railcars is being funded by the jurisdictions Virginia, Maryland, and DC. It is a regional investment in future safe Metrorail operations. The WMSC is the independent rail safety oversight agency established by Virginia, Maryland, and the District of Columbia to verify that Metrorail achieves and maintains the highest level of safety. Our role in overseeing the 8000 series railcar safety certification is designed to meet the region's expectations. As with each subsequent acquisition of railcars, it is an opportunity for Metrorail to design, engineer, and commission railcars that leverage the safest railcar design practices, incorporates lessons learned through accident investigations, customer and Metrorail employee insights, and a disciplined implementation of safety management industry practices. In 2022, the WMSC identified the 8000 series railcar procurement for in-depth review. As work continues to progress from one phase of this project to another, you have heard us report in past meetings that Metrorail has provided a few documents that pertain to the preliminary engineering work that has been completed. However, additional documentation remains outstanding that is necessary for the WMSC to independently trace and verify that identified hazards have been fully addressed in the design. The WMSC continues to request design criteria and associated engineering documentation necessary to validate the completeness of the safety considerations identified in the preliminary hazard analysis and other safety certification deliverables, and that these are adequately incorporated into the railcar design. WMSC staff remain engaged with WMATA to establish a path forward for obtaining the outstanding documentation required to complete the safety certification review. But this is becoming increasingly difficult at this stage of the project. The 8000 series railcar project continues to advance while we are left without the associated materials to properly conduct our independent assessment of the appropriateness of WMATA's safety certification. In September, the WMSC began conducting an in-depth review of control center operational changes related to the Operations Desk 4. As this map shows, Operation Desk 4 controls the Metrorail territory, all points west of Courthouse Station on the Orange Line and Silver Line. Prior to this project, all operating desks in the control center consisted of two controllers, a radio controller and a buttons controller. This project consolidates rail traffic controller duties into one single rail traffic controller at Operations Desk 4. Metrorail has indicated this will improve efficiencies of rail traffic control, eliminate miscommunications that have occurred when there are two controllers, and thereby prevent rail safety incidents on the Metrorail system. During the safety certification, WMSC staff attended multiple test observation windows, including both overnight and daytime sessions, to gain insight into operational performance, controller workload, and other human factor considerations during the test phase. WMSC staff also observed training, reviewed training materials and procedural updates, and evaluated the supporting safety certification documentation for this configuration change. The WMSC will continue to monitor operational use of the single rail traffic controller to ensure that the safety critical control functions remain properly validated and that the change continues to perform as intended. In addition to software, fleet, and operations center initiatives, the WMSC is continuing oversight of technology projects intended to enhance system-wide mechanical safety monitoring. One of these efforts is the Automated Wayside Inspection System, or AWIS. AWIS refers to a suite of technologies used in the rail industry to automatically monitor the condition of rail cars as trains pass by. These systems aim to enhance safety and efficiency by detecting defects that may be difficult or impossible to identify during manual stationary inspections of the rail cars. Metrorail is installing 6 of these automated wayside inspection locations, like the ones you see here throughout the Metrorail system, to enable real-time railcar back-to-back wheel measurements and other associated measurements on the rail cars. The AWIS project continues to progress, and WMSD staff recently observed training on the data capture system for AWIS. This is called TrainBase, and as it does with other Metrorail operations and inspection systems, the WMSC plans to retain access to this TrainBase data repository to independently view and verify AWIS performance, including how exceptions data are captured and addressed, and the WMSC will continue its oversight work until Metrorail completes its safety certification of this project, at which point we will conduct a final verification activity to confirm readiness for our concurrence. Thank you, Chair Hart. That concludes this presentation.
Thank you. You covered quite a few areas there. I wonder if there are any questions from any of the commissioners regarding any of those areas. I have one myself, but are there any questions from commissioners to?
We will start with Secretary Treasurer Conklin.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Smith. I was concerned about the 8,000 car report and whether you think any additional action by the commission to encourage greater cooperation with the review of the materials or provision of those materials is needed. Or would you seek a resolution of the commissioners or anything like that to try to guide Metrorail to be more responsive?
I think that might be a little ahead of where we are at this stage. We have now received kind of a list of elements that are being delivered called CDRILs or contract deliverable requirements, and we are currently reviewing Metrorail's response to those documents as far as Metrorail's categorized those into several different categories. Like some they've categorized as a no, they will not deliver those to us. We are going through some of those CDRILs to determine which ones we think are relevant to our safety certification oversight work. In some instances, we understand the no because some of the documents and some of the deliverables are physical in nature, such as models of the rail cars, keys to the rail cars. Those elements we do agree with WMATA that those are not required for our safety certification oversight, but we are trying to validate all of those documents and come up with a list of those. So at this stage, I don't think we're asking for any type of relief to get those documents until we kind of have a further list to deliver to WMATA.
Okay, I appreciate that. But if you get to the point where the delays are impacting your ability to meet their schedule, I think it's important that we talk about that so that we don't end up in a situation where the commission is identified as somehow hampering the ability to complete the work on the schedule the authority would like to. We appreciate that comment and do believe that we are getting to a point in which our work is in jeopardy of having an impact, as you just described. Coincidentally, we are sitting down, the senior leadership team and Mr. Smith and some others are going to sit down on Thursday to kind of review the current state of affairs. And we expect that likely we'll start the new year with some suggestions to commissioners about the directions that we need to be moving.
Yes, I had a similar question because I'm assuming that the delay that we are encountering from them is going to delay the approval of the entire process, and I wonder if they're aware of that, and what kind of reasons are they giving for not giving us the information? Is it proprietary and they don't trust us to keep it that way, or just what are the reasons that they're, I heard some of your examples about physical models, but I'm talking about just data. What are some of the reasons why they're withholding that from us?
I see Dr. Myers come off mute if you
I-
want.
I was just going to start the answer, and then you could certainly pick it up, unless Sharmila wants to say anything. I was just going to say that certainly proprietary information affects a small number of the documents that might pertain, for instance, to negotiations or agreements between WMATA and its suppliers. That would have maybe some, but minimal relevance to safety certification. More importantly, a number of the documents that we're seeking that have to do with the whole gamut of construction of the vehicles, crashworthiness of the cars, and every other aspect of design still, according to WMATA, remain in draft despite the quickly encroaching final design. So Metro has said that it's reluctant to share with us draft documents. I should say Metro has refused to share with us draft documents, but the continuing status of those documents as draft documents as the clock continues to tick is of some concern. I don't know, Sharmila or Paul, if you wanted to comment further.
Yeah, I think it's important to note that the documents that we are requesting tie directly into safety certification elements that we find in the PHAs or the FAMICAs that show a hazard being mitigated by a design element, and that design document is the element that we're requesting to trace the validity of those mitigations. So we don't think that our requests are outside of our oversight of safety certification of this process. And so in some instances, WMATA has indicated proprietary information or some other thing. We still don't necessarily see that as being the entire story.
So is this information typically, I know it's not possible to generalize, but is it typically information that you will eventually need to see before you can give the approval, or is there something that's going to be happening that's going to change what information you'll need, or what? And then my next question is the refusal from WMATA or is it from the manufacturer?
Ms. Samara Singha, you looked like you were leaning into your
Yes.
camera.
Chair Hart and Mrs. Smith, if I may, the refusal to provide documentation is from Metro Rail. We engage directly with Metro Rail. And the documents that we are asking for are required for us to conduct the evaluation throughout the various phases of the project. It is incrementally required for us to have access to those documents to independently verify these aspects that Mrs. Smith has been talking about in order to get us to concurrence. So it's a yes to the answer to the question you are raising. Do we need that for our eventual concurrence? Yes.
Well, it certainly sounds to me like we're creating a pathway for delay, and I'm just wondering, is there something we can do that if we recognize this problem early in the process? Can we avoid the negativeness of it?
If I may add, we have been engaging with Metro on resolving this issue since September of last year. And this is another example of staff at the WMSC working diligently to try to find alternative pathways to resolving any roadblocks to getting our work done, and not merely just prescribing that it's our way or the highway. So what you see us doing over the last year is trying to leverage as many touch points with various levels of the organization to get Metro to understand that we are trying to accomplish our obligation here that the region has entrusted us with. And that's all we are asking to do here.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Are there any questions from any of the other commissioners for Mr. Smith regarding this issue or any of the other several issues that he covered just now?
Yes, the vice chair has raised his hand.
Yes, please, Vice Chair.
Yeah, a couple of questions on the 8,000 cars. You mentioned the FAMICA, the failure modes, effects, and criticality analysis. we do have that document, and the requests that we're making are in relation to that document. Is that correct?
That is correct. Those are a subset of the Seadrills that they have delivered to us is in the safety certification realm of those documents. So we have the PHAs, the FAMICAs, those documents we do have, and that's correct. We are tying those hazards from those documents back to design elements where we are requesting, and that's where we're at a stalemate.
So this isn't our first rodeo here. The 7,000 cars, we also had issues with safety certification, as I recall. And I don't want to give you an English assignment, but can you compare and contrast our experience with 7,000 versus 8,000? Is this something new, or are these the same types of problems that we ran into last time?
I think that's a question probably, well, I interrupted you, Paul, but I was going to suggest that Ms. Samara Singha might be able to provide some historic perspective because, of course, the 7,000 series railcar procurement predates the WMSC. The TOC was the Cognizant Safety Authority at that time. And, of course, Ms. Samara Singha was associated with that former entity.
The short answer is it is the similar experience from what the Tri-State Oversight Committee experienced during the 7,000 series safety certification efforts.
Did the TUC approve the safety certification on the 7,000 cars?
I'm sorry, the Tri-State Oversight Committee concurred on the revenue use of the 7,000 series rail cars sometime in April of 2015.
Well, I'm really concerned with the difficulty in getting access to documentation. You know, we already have a subpoena for worker health and safety. I hope that we're not moving towards having to subpoena all the information that we need in order to do our jobs, but I think that's a little bit disturbing. But I think the other commissioners have come up with some interesting questions on this. So hopefully, if this is not moving forward, there's some action that we can take, short of another subpoena to get this information moving. I did have another question on the AWIS. The AWIS system, it's designed to measure back-to-back distances, and this is related to some of the wheel migration issues that we had with the 7,000 cars. But I think Mr. Smith, you alluded that it does other things too. Can you tell us what other functions the AWIS system might do?
Yes, Vice Chair Lobby. So the AWIS system was intended to measure back-to-back wheel measurements. That's why WMATA had initially procured this system. However, the software can detect other elements of wheel migrations and out-around conditions, other elements of the rail cars that can be measured. I'm not familiar with all of those, but WMATA has indicated that they are now exploring those other elements that this system can measure. But that was the intended purpose, was just to measure the back-to-back wheel measurements. But there's definitely more that the system can do.
Yeah, I'm interested, I guess, in wheel profiles and other types of measurements that might be able to be measured with this type of system. But if you would follow up and see what the capabilities are, you know, this could be a valuable tool to Metro.
Yes, absolutely. We can do that, Vice Chair Lobby.
Thank you.
One idea that occurs to me is that I'm thinking the FAA certainly must have to go through a lot of proprietary information when they're certifying the safety of an aircraft or an item in use in the aviation system. I just wonder if we should explore that to see how what kind of difficulties they have encountered and what they did about it. That's just a thought that occurs to mind from my.
Appreciate the comment. However, you know, from my former life, Ms. Silbaugh's former life at the NTSB, we've dealt with this issue many, many times. And as we've explained to Metro, we are Any obligation to protect sensitive, proprietary, private, or any other kind of protected or privileged information would also apply to us, and we would respect that. We know how to safeguard information.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for any of the commissioners for Mr. Smith on this or any of the other subjects that he addressed?
I see no other hands, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Silbaugh. In that case, we'll move on to safety event investigations. We will hear presentations on all of the reports and then consider in a single motion on all of them. If any commissioner wishes to remove a report from the group that will consider as a single vote, please indicate that at the end of the presentation on that report. Mr. Quigley, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair Hart. In 2024, Metro Rail reported 14 red signal overruns between January 1st and November 1st. In 2025, there have been a total of 10 red signal overruns in that same time frame. These overruns include trains and rail maintenance vehicles operating on both the main line and in rail yards, and all of which were operating in manual mode. WMSC has conducted its own independent review of these events as they occurred to understand the contributing causes and to explore methods for correcting those causes to prevent reoccurrence. The causes and contributing factors to the red signal overrun events include miscommunication, loss of situational awareness, and noncompliance with written rules and procedures. Investigation Whiskey 407 involves a red signal overrun that occurred on Sunday, February 23rd, 2025. During yard moves at the Dulles Rail Yard, a train operator moved a 6-car consist from track 14 to the S&I shop track 4 blow pit, uncoupled a married pair, and requested permission to pull back the remaining 4-car consist. At approximately 8:49 a.m., the interlocking operator issued an absolute block to clear signal November 99 216 and to stop no closer than 10 feet from red signal November 99 186. In the readback, the train operator incorrectly stated they had permission to pull back to November 99 186, clearing November 99 16 signal, and that error was not corrected. Within seconds, the train overran November 99 186, and along with 2 subsequent red signal overruns at about 8:50 a.m. The interlocking operator, who had turned to update documentation, looked back at the display board, observed the movement past November 99 186, November 99 42, and November 99 34, and directed the train operator to stop. SAFE and ATC inspected the involved switches and found no damage. A track emergency response team inspected the track and also reported no damage. In accordance with procedures, the train operator and the interlocking operator were removed from service for post-incident testing. Testing determined both were in compliance with WMATA's drug and alcohol policy. Based on the investigation, the probable cause was the train operator's loss of situational awareness, failing to stop short of 3 signals displaying red aspects. Contributing factors included incorrect radio repeat back by the operator and failure by the interlocking operator to correct the misstatement and continuously monitor the move during the critical period. The train operator and interlocking operator both completed retraining, and the Office of Rail Transportation conducted a safety campaign to raise awareness of distracted operating and red signal overruns. I'll pause for questions.
Any questions from any of the commissioners for Mr. Quigley?
Yes, the Vice Chair has raised his hand.
Yes, please, Vice Chair.
Thanks, Mr. Quigley. This is another interesting situation where the radio readbacks are not corrected. I got a couple of questions here. First of all, the operator, was he following the movements that he confirmed over the radio?
I don't believe there was a 16 signal in that route he was going, so no.
So he couldn't have implemented what he repeated back.
Oh no, not at all.
Yeah, that should have been something that the yard up interlocking operator picked up on. Is the interlocking operator, is he required to monitor these movements and not do anything else until those movements are completed? I mean, that seems a bit onerous with the number of movements you have in a yard. Is that what's expected of that position?
That's a good question. I'd like to, maybe Mr. Walker, I don't know if Mr. Walker is available if he would be able to share some info on that.
Yes, well, Vice Chair Lobby, just like the rail traffic controllers, they are to multitask. They have cameras throughout the rail yard that they can see the movements. They have a bird's eye view where they can see their yard. So, and they can also track the movement of the vehicles with the older boards through the flashing lights and electronically with the newer systems. But so yes, they should be monitoring train movements and radio communications at all times.
So they can't be doing anything else during that period?
Well, no,
I see.
that's the multitasking. So they will be doing other things. So as a train's coming in from mainline at the end of its day, it is going to be recording the car numbers on manually on paper as well as providing the route. So they will be multitasking, but they are responsible for the safe movement of the vehicle within their territory.
All right, thank you very much.
Any further questions?
I see no other hands.
Okay, in that case, Mr. Quigley, please proceed.
Thank you. Investigation Whiskey 408 involves a red signal overrun that occurred on Friday, February 28th, 2025. At 12:47 a.m., train ID 792 departed Vienna Station Track 1 and passed red signal Kilo 0802. Prior to the event, train 792 serviced Vienna Station around 12:40 a.m. The train operator then keyed down, walked through the consist, and keyed up on the opposite end with a non-revenue destination code to West Falls Churchyard, and without authorization, placed the train in stop and proceed mode and moved the train without speed commands or a lunar signal. The train traversed switch 1A, which was laying in a reverse from a prior move, and came to a stop short of switch 1 Bravo on track number 2. The terminal supervisor attempted radio contact with the train operator, but received no response and reported the red signal overrun to the control center at 12:47 a.m. At 12:48, the train operator contacted the radio rail traffic controller to request a non-revenue move towards West Falls Churchyard. The train operator stated Kilo 0802 signal was lunar but changed to red while departing the station. A ground walk around found no damage. ATC later confirmed the signaling equipment was functioning normally. Switch 1 Bravo was clamped reverse to complete the move. A replacement operator transported the train to West Falls Churchyard. In accordance with procedures, the train operator was removed from service for post-event testing. The testing confirmed compliance with the drug and alcohol policy. Based on the investigation, including cab video showing the train operator focused on the console while departing, the probable cause was the train operator's loss of situational awareness and rushing through tasks, initiating movement in stop and proceed without verifying a lunar proceed aspect or route alignment, and without required permission from the terminal supervisor or the radio rail traffic controller. The Office of Rail Transportation again conducted a safety campaign with the focus on preventing red signal overruns and operating trains without speed commands. Thank you. That completes this presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Quigley. Are there any questions on any of these reports from any of the commissioners?
There are several, but we'll start with the vice chair.
Thank you.
Thank you. He stated that the lunar change to a red signal as he was departing. Did we confirm that? Is that actually what happened?
No, it was red the entire time. Sorry.
It was red the entire time. So he told us that it was lunar and it changed. On the stop and proceed mode, how can this happen? Don't they know? Doesn't everybody know? Even I know now that I have to have permission to go to stop and proceed mode. Don't they know that?
Correct. It's outlined. They're taught. They need permission to enter the code into the console, and they get that permission from the terminal supervisor or from the control center.
This is very fundamental. I mean, this isn't a case of the individual wasn't trained or somehow was absent the day they talked about stop and proceed in training. I mean this is pretty basic, and I wonder why we continue to see operators that just decide that they're not going to follow the policies and the procedures and just take action. Because this seems to be very intentional to me. Why would somebody do something like that?
Yeah, and I'm gonna pick on Mr. Walker again. I know there was a time where they made a adjustment to the stop and proceed where the operators, if they were coming into a platform and they were within the platform limits and lost speed commands, that they did not need permission to activate stop and proceed, so they could just properly berth. But I don't know if that's the case anymore.
That is the case, Mr.
Okay.
Quigley and Vice Chair Lobby. So the train operators are required to request permission anytime they enter stop and proceed on main line, with the exception of properly berthing the train. Train operators have to use stop and proceed when they're in the rail yards, so they're commonly using it, and it is just drifting from the known procedures. They are properly trained, but yet they still somehow enter stop and proceed without authorization.
So it was improper for this individual to enter stop and proceed without authorization, correct?
The train had a red signal in front of the operator. The red signal would take the speed commands away from the train, and they should not have entered stop and proceed without authorization or waiting for the lunar signal.
But they could still do it if they're berthing the train, meaning they're trying to adjust the train to the 8-car marker, I would assume.
That is correct.
Okay, I think it's very troubling that we continue to see this, but maybe there is a little overlap here in understanding what the rule is. Thank you.
So following up on that, what's the plan? What's Metro's plan on what to do to prevent this from happening in the future?
As we mentioned, Chair Hart, they have the safety stand downs, these campaigns where they've been getting out there and talking to operators and just having conversations, sharing the procedure, getting feedback on maybe if things are confusing to certain operators or as a whole. But that's what they've been doing, just their campaigns.
This would suggest strongly to me that they aren't doing enough and that they need to figure out a better way to try to prevent it from happening, because it's still happening and I'm not satisfied that it won't happen again.
Right. I think ATO definitely has helped with red signal overruns. Obviously, when they're this was before ATO, but when they're at the certain areas on the railroad, the rules change, and we are seeing this happen. So I would have to agree that they could probably do a little bit better job.
Well, that's where we enter into the equation, because we need to help them figure out how to do it better.
Right.
Chair, Commissioner Rouse has raised his hand as well.
Yes, Commissioner Rouse.
Yeah, this is, as you know, one of my topics here. And thank you, and Commissioner Lobby and Adam, for answering part of this, because I did highlight that as well. This whole issue with the statement that it was lunar, yet they still used the stop and proceed. So I was confused about that. Certification procedure wise, when something like this happens, are they allowed to go back into service?
The operator? Are you referring to the operator?
Yeah.
No, they're removed for their, they call it 1075, which is the drug and alcohol test, and then they have to wait for results. They're usually either held at home or brought into the division for a couple days before they issue the discipline or retraining or whatever the department finds necessary.
Okay, but there is a path for them to go back, which is part of the issue here. I don't know how serious this issue is being taken. And the question on the previous one was did that count as one overread pass read or 3 passes? Because we have 10 for the year, right?
That was just one.
Okay, so it's really more than 10 on the year. It's 13 or something of that nature. Right?
If you would count each, yes, signal.
I can do math if I can do math as an engineer. So this is, as you alluded to, Adam, I think, with ATO, the excuses are done, right? This has to be 0. This number should be 0. And everywhere I go, whenever we have these discussions, I think people find it shocking that the number isn't 0, right? And yeah, we've had the discussions before about, well, there's certain circumstances, yard and others, where you can understand why it might have happened. But I think too, sometimes we enable this to continue when we make those discussions and we have those discussions. And I'm looking at, I was just flipping through the safety committee. I didn't see anything about this. I don't know that it's a goal, right? It should be an absolute goal for safety of operations. This is not the first year this has been brought up. We've brought it up multiple times in our discussions. I know it's been brought up previously, well before this, you know, even in my time as a board member, and I'm sure with Mr. Lobby. It just doesn't seem that this is a focus of this needs to be zero. Let's put our effort into training, making it aware for everybody from the top down to the operators, the people moving trains in the yard. Pay attention to this issue. It cannot happen. It is such a fundamental issue in terms of operating trains, whether it's on a transit agency or heavy railroad or high-speed railroad for that matter, that I just don't know if it's getting that level of attention to say we need to get this to zero. But as you mentioned, we've got ATO. I think the excuses are done at this point. We need to find collectively between ourselves and WMATA how we can get this number to zero, whether that's a goal, a program, or some sort of effort. But I think you kind of you alluded to it as well, did Chair Hart and Commissioner Lobby. How do we get this to where it needs to be, right? We've drug on long enough, and 13 to 10 is not a really great number, right? We didn't make much progress. How do we get it down to where it should be? And that's zero. I don't know. I'm not looking for an answer. I'm just, you know, as you know, I see this and it frustrates me that we can't make progress on this collectively.
And we're frustrated as well. And your message and the message of the other commissioners is received loud and clear. And I think now that ATO is fully in use and we've concurred throughout at least the individual lines, it provides a sort of an inflection point to turn back to this as a topic and discuss with Metro how we can work together to bring this number down to zero. I see Commissioner Higgins.
Yes.
Fascinating discussion. I have a quick question. In our looking at this issue, and we keep talking about trying to get Metro to improve, do we ever talk directly to the workers themselves as to why this is happening? I mean, I feel like maybe there are, I don't know, however many different answers, but this is the people part of it, right? That this is the individuals who are running these trains who are the ones who are overrunning them. Where are we getting our information?
Well, obviously, these people don't work for us, so we don't have the same communication that Metro. But for each of these events and all of the other safety events, the investigations team has the opportunity and takes advantage of the opportunity to participate directly in the interviews with the personnel who are involved in these safety events. Mr. Quigley, you might want to say more about that role.
Yeah, I mean, we speak to all the operators and investigate and ask them what was going through, their head, what were they doing? Were they distracted? And I would say majority of the time, they're somewhat kind of like robots. They've been doing something all day. It could have been, 6 hours into their shift. And every time that they left that station or every time, they went through an area, they had a lunar signal. And it just becomes so routine to them that they kind of let their guard down and get caught up in it. As you see, this operator, swore that it was a lunar signal. But, when we talk to them, that was a train, non-revenue train. They come in like the last train and then they reverse ends quickly and go back to the yard. Nights prior, whenever that operator reverse ends and keyed up, they always had a lunar. But for this event, this time, he didn't have that lunar right away. And he left without checking. So it's just, we always say situational awareness, and I would say most of the time it is. People just become robotic and just so routine, through their shift.
Are there answers to that we're familiar with that either Metro's not employing or that are being ignored? I mean, I think situational awareness obviously is extremely important, and there are lots of reasons sometimes why that doesn't happen. But if it's just negligence, then that needs to be dealt with too. And I'm not. This is obviously got to come from the workers themselves and Metro. But I would really like to know the owners, the drivers, the people driving these trains are the ones where the error is. And is there some kind of alert system, a warrant? I mean, I don't know. I have no expertise here, but I agree with everybody's concern because it's something that we keep seeing happening and doesn't get fixed.
Well, in manual operations, that alert system would be the stop and proceed. In this case, the operator had to stop and proceed flashing on the console and still chose to enter the code and leave without checking the signal and correct rail. So now that you have ATO, obviously we've kind of said that it helps, but in the yards, they don't operate in ATO, they still operate in manual mode.
Well, okay, so as we get deeper into this, and I mean, I'm fully supportive of us trying to take more action. I really would like to light a fire under these people and say, what the heck is going on here? Because it's not looking good.
Agreed.
And human error will be part of the equation by definition. And so once you see so many similar human errors, you have to wonder, is there a design fix that makes these human errors less likely?
Yeah, or a lack of whatever it is. I mean, I think it's human error can be corrected, right? But anyway, I've said enough. I would be very interested in what kind of other examples are out there where we can't be the only ones who have these kind of problems, and yet they're not getting better, from what I hear.
Any further questions for Mr. Quigley?
Yes, Chair Commissioner Drummer has his hand raised.
Yes.
Please.
Thank you very much. Mr. Quigley, thank you very much for laying this out. And to fellow commissioners and Chair Hart, thank you for raising this as the issue that it really is. Red signal overruns, one step away from a catastrophic event. I get that. And I think everybody's on target here. One of my concerns is accurately defining the problem, looking for accountability and responsibility and resolution, both in task execution and supervision and oversight. Sustainable corrective actions. We can fix it today, but if it's not sustainable, we're going to see it again. Perhaps this is what we're looking at. And then ultimately, quality control and quality assurance in implementing those corrective actions. And we've seen some gaps across the board here. So I think where we can help as that extra eye, that extra set of auditing eyes, is to help frame where we go from here. And I'm hoping that we can. And Mr. Quigley, I don't think anybody can do it better than you and your staff at this point, because you're far enough away from the problem that you see it, where you can give an honest opinion on where we go from here. I don't think there's any lack of motivation on the part of either party, WMATA or WMSC, on trying to get at this. But when you're in the middle of the operation, sometimes you lose sight of where you're going. So I'll stop there on that and just say, I think I love the approach in saying that we can partner and move forward and see if we can't get more done in this arena. But secondly, how to really define success. 14 incidents in 2024, 10 incidents in 2025. What level of success or failure is that? How is that when you put it in perspective of all of the total stops that were not red signal overruns? And how does that compare, as Ms. Higgins insinuated, how does that compare to other agencies in the industry? How are we doing? We don't really know. We may be outstanding or we may be terrible, but what I'd like to know is, where do we stand in that realm of performance? And from there, we can determine what our risks are and then move forward. But I think this is something we definitely have to get at. I don't know if zero would ever be the answer, but seeking zero is certainly the objective. And I hope we can move in that direction. And I think we, as a commission, can help frame that approach.
Zero is the goal, sir.
Absolutely. It's always the goal.
If I could ask one more question, do we know from all the information you guys have gathered, are there repeat incidents here? We've got some operators who are, this is a chronic problem, or is it distributed across all of the people who are involved?
It's pretty broad. I mean, you do have a few that are repeat offenders, but it's not not as consistent. You know, it's more broad across the operators, not a few
Okay.
individuals. Yeah, it's pretty. It's usually newer operators that come out after training, after they've been certified. So we have kind of identified some of those. You know, like new operators, years of experience, if they've been on operating on that line. We have that cap right now for the territory familiarization where we're trying to get the operators to be certified and know exactly where they're at on the territory. So when they're told to, you know, stop at a signal that's, you know, called November 99 186, they actually know where that is, and they just don't repeat it back and hope they find it on their way while they're moving. So hope that answers your question.
Okay, it does. I mean, you've said that it's basically there is no particular pattern, which makes it even harder to solve, I would guess, other than just saying somehow having a plan for everybody.
Chair, Secretary Treasurer Conklin has his hand raised.
Yes, please.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm still not used to being introduced that way, so it'll take me a minute. At the risk of being repetitive, and I think Mr. Quigley started to answer my question, I think we've seen all of these in incident reports and investigations, but not any sort of cross-cutting assessment of the red civil signal overruns over a time series to identify whether there was commonality between conditions. And you mentioned a little bit of it with the territorial familiarity, but I was wondering if it's worthwhile to take these as a larger group, maybe 3 years worth of conditions or incidents, and seeing whether there's any kind of trend to be drawn from it. Because I feel like we complain about this, but we don't have enough information to really provide substantive feedback to Metro Rail about what our expectation is for how this is addressed. Because clearly there's nothing we can directly do to cause the operators to be paying attention or to cause this to go down. But clearly we could provide some assessment of whether there are conditions that are driving this, or when it's in an accident investigation or an incident investigation, I'm not sure it has the same impact as if it's in some sort of other analytical framework where there's more emphasis on trying to solve the problem, because these are all, I think, coming to us as one-offs. So it's a little bit of a speech and a little bit of a question, but I'm wondering whether there's some other type of analysis that we should be doing to be more helpful to the agency on this.
I'm confident there is, and we can take that as an IOU.
And Chair, the Vice Chair has raised his hand.
Yes, please, Vice Chair.
Yes, thank you. I already said my piece before, but you know, very interesting conversation. I wanted to respond to at least to Commissioner Drummer's comment about, you know, how you measure success. And one thing we need to keep in mind is we're comparing 2024 to 2025, you know, and I think during this period we have ATO involved also, which screws up the data. And so there's a lot of different things going on here, and it's very, you know, we've talked about having metrics that we can depend on, but again, they've got to be normalized somehow. You know, when we have a major change like ATO coming into place where the machine, you know, takes care of many of the red signal overruns, then that skews up the statistics from the year before. So we have to have a way of understanding, you know, if we're going in the right direction or not. So that's just an observation there. You know, as far as what do you do in the future, my opinion has always been that management oversight is lacking on Washington Metro. I know that there's a rule, I don't know if it's still in place, but operators are not allowed to even close the door on a station platform until they have a clear signal or a lunar signal. I don't know if that's still in place, but I think that's a perfect example where a supervisor can sit on one of those nice granite seats at the end of the platform and watch and see how many trains, even close the doors before they have the lunar signal and are ready to depart. I think that there's some simple things that Metro could do with their managers, and their managers are supposed to be responsible for what the workers do. I think there's some simple things that they can do to provide a better level of oversight and better control over what's happening on their system.
Appreciate those comments. And of course, Metro is not alone in its ability to inspect. We can also use our authority to inspect, and our wheels are turning on how we might be able to do that in a data-driven way as well.
But David, I don't want to look at it as an inspection. This is something that should happen every single day. If a manager is or even a station manager is doing his job at Metro every day, he should be observing what's going on and making sure that it complies. It's not about going out and putting your inspector hat on and looking at this just for one day, a week, or whatever. It should be every day. There should be some management oversight of what's going on there, and even the radio. We have so many issues where the radio incorrect radio readbacks. That's real simple. Somebody can sit at home and listen to the radio, and when those occur, take action to make sure that those are corrected. But this is a manager needs to be providing this oversight every day that he's on the property, and from what I can see, that's just not happening. A lot of the employees are basically on their own, and basically seem to get away with a lot of things unless they have an accident or an incident like something that comes to our attention. So that's really my opinion on that. I think management oversight of what's going on the property is key to curing many of these issues.
Vice Chair Lobby, I want to reinforce your point. Supervision of execution is critical to success in any organization, and I think it's very important in this matter. Thank you very much for bringing that up.
And Chair Commissioner Rouse has raised his hand.
Yes, please.
Yeah, sorry, and apparently my camera's given up on me here, so you'll have to deal with my blurry face, which is probably better. But I want to underscore something that I said earlier. It starts with messaging from the top. And the discussions we have here, but also throughout WMATA's leadership and all the way down. And I, again, maybe I missed it. I was trying to go through some of the Safety and Operations Committee material because it should be there. It should be something that's discussed every time that group gets together, as well as probably even the regular board meeting. It's such a fundamental element to operations and safety here, and it's been unacceptably high for so long. And I will go out and say 10 is too high of a number, right? Every other property I work at, a pass red signals is such a big deal, right? That person's never coming back to work, for one thing, and two, it's everybody knows there's an issue, and they talk about, hey, how did this happen? I don't see multiple instances per year of that happening. But again, it's a matter of, I think, focus too. And when you start with the mentality of this is important, and it's driven all the way up to the top, and people see it in discussions with Safety and Operation Committee, or even the executive committees, or whatever else from the board level down, that it kind of flows down to your employees as well. Everybody knows this is important. We need to focus on this. And I think, to the point I was trying to make earlier, is I don't know that I see that. And I think that's one of the things that needs to get corrected here in the next years. It's that messaging and making sure it is a goal and everybody's aware of that goal. And it flows all the way down from the executive level to the employees who are most impacted by this. Mr. Quigley, you raised one of the most fundamental examples that we have out there, right? This whole situational awareness issue when it comes to signals and past overruns. That's how 188 happened on Amtrak, right? People remember that. That was one of the first things that was said. It was, man, every day I get to that signal, it's green. And I thought it was green because you're right. It's such a repetitive environment that we work in. And so, we have to drive this home, and it has to start with messaging. in terms of not only our side, but the WMATA side as well, and how we get that to be everybody aware that this is important and this is a goal of ours. So that's all I've got.
Thank you.
And Chair Commissioner Bob has raised his hand.
Yes, Commissioner Bob.
No, I think I've heard enough. Thanks.
Any further questions for Mr. Quigley on this one?
No other hands, sir.
In that case, Ms. Keyrose, now it's your turn. Would you please present the next report? Thank you for that very intense discussion about a very difficult issue, and stay tuned because there's more to come.
Thank you, Chair Hart.
Yes, Ms. Keyrose.
Investigation Whiskey 0409 involves evacuation for life safety reasons that occurred on Tuesday, October 8th, 2024 at 11:33 a.m. Light smoke was observed at Foggy Bottom GW station emanating from a gap between the parapet wall and the concrete wall on the mezzanine level above track 2. The station manager immediately utilized a fire extinguisher, then returned to the kiosk, and at 11:36 a.m. notified the control center to request the fire department. At 11:37 a.m., the communications agent contacted the fire department and then instructed the station manager to evacuate and close the station after reports of heavy smoke. The fans were activated at 11:39 a.m., and trains were directed to bypass the station with environmental systems turned off. MTPD arrived and established a command post at 11:46 a.m. The fire department arrived at 11:48 a.m. Third rail power on track 2 was de-energized at 11:53 a.m. so firefighters could access the area and extinguish the remaining smolder. After the scene was cleared, power was restored and the station was reopened. No injuries were reported. Based on CCTV review and on-scene findings, the probable cause was debris accumulated within a crack behind the parapet wall that ignited. As a preventative improvement, Metrorail is evaluating telescoping vacuum equipment and related cleaning methods to reach behind the parapet walls and similar gaps to reduce the risk of debris-related smoke or fire events. And I can pause for any questions.
Any questions for Ms. Keyrose?
See any hands, Chair?
Okay, next item, please.
All right, the final report before you today, Whiskey 0410, involves improper roadway worker protection event that occurred on Thursday, December 12, 2024 at 9:39 a.m. An emergency response team roadway worker in charge, or RIC, requested and received permission from the control center to conduct a walking track inspection from Federal Center Southwest to LaFont Plaza, track 1, under Advanced Mobile Flagger or AMF protection. The AMF location was confirmed at LaFont Plaza platform at the ACAR marker, and at 9:41 a.m., train operators were advised that roadway personnel were present between the stations. At approximately 9:50 a.m., non-revenue train 724 entered LaFont Plaza station. The rail supervisor operating the train failed to stop at the ACAR marker for the required AMF safety briefing and yet continued through the station and past the roadway crew who were in a place of safety. The RIC immediately notified the control center. The radio RTC contacted the rail supervisor operating train 724 and they confirmed they had not stopped to speak with the AMF. The supervisor was removed from service for post-incident testing. The train was taken out of service for investigation and no injuries occurred. The probable cause was the supervisor's lack of situational awareness and failure to follow advanced mobile flagging procedures, specifically not stopping for the mandatory AMF briefing at the ACAR marker while roadway worker protection was in effect. The rail supervisor completed refresher training with an emphasis on station servicing and AMF procedures. Thank you. That completes this presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Keyrose. Are there any questions from any of the commissioners for Ms. Keyrose?
See no hands for this topic, Chair.
Okay, as I mentioned before, we're going to consider these.
Sorry, the Vice Chair has raised his hand.
Okay, yes, Vice Chair.
Sorry, I'm a little bit late there with finding my hand there.
Not to worry.
I wanted to talk about who gets to operate trains. I've heard today that vehicle maintenance people are allowed to operate trains, and they have to be qualified on the right of way, supervisors. And we also have operators, and I'm curious as how do those three groups maintain their skill level to operate a train? Are they subject to the same requirements or different requirements? Are they supposed to operate a train every once in a while? How do they basically maintain their skill?
So the rail supervisors do monthly proficiency rides to maintain their skills, and they certify the same as the train operator, which is every 2 years, and that keeps them current.
So they operate monthly, and they operate themselves, or are they operating an ATO, or
Yeah,
because
it could
there's
be
a
either
difference in
mode.
operating an
So
there's a
let me
difference in
say this. So
operating an ATO and
supervisors, they have to do a monthly proficiency ride in addition to their usual duties, which do include taking over operations. So when a train operator has to take a personal break, or a train operator is removed from service, or they could be running late, supervisors operate trains on a regular basis. So the proficiency ride is in addition to them operating. They might operate every day, and then they also do a proficiency ride, if that makes sense.
Can you define proficiency ride for me?
Mr. Walker, thank you.
Yes, Vice Chair Lobby, so supervisors are required to, and I do not know the exact number of minutes. It's 20, 30 minutes that they're required to operate once a month. They record that ride in their cell phone, and it's recorded electronically. As Ms. Kuros was saying, they do operate on a daily basis. If by some chance they have to operate a significant portion of time, they can input that into their device, and that can count as a proficiency ride. But so they're operating daily, and depending on what's happening on the line, they should be operating in ATO, but they could also be operating in manual, depending on what's going on and where they're going with their vehicle.
Well, to me, it just seemed unusual that a supervisor would not stop for a advanced mobile flagger, and it's the only reason I could come up with that might happen is they're basically not used to operating. But it seems to me to be something that's somewhat unexpected especially for a supervisor.
So in this case, I believe the train was out of service. So the 700 denotation is going to denote that the train is out of service. So the operators, the supervisors, do operate picking up customers when required, but sometimes they will move a train from one location to another. There are procedures for that, and they should stop or are required to stop, but I believe this was an out of service train, which could have contributed to the supervisor just failing to stop, knowing that they don't have to service the station.
Yeah, well, you kind of expect the supervisors to be the best and the brightest. So again, a little concerned that they would make such a basic mistake. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions from the commissioners for Ms. Kuros?
I see no other hands, Chair.
Okay, in that case, it's time to take up a vote on all of these items taken together. So is there a motion to adopt the investigation reports that have just been presented, Whiskey 0407 through Whiskey 0410? Is there a motion?
So moved.
Okay, it's moved. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say yay. Yay.
Yay.
Yay.
Any opposed, please raise your hand and say nay.
Sorry, I muted myself. Chair, the vote is unanimous. The reports as presented will be adopted. So that's Whiskey 0407 through Whiskey 0410.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Silbaugh. There are no resolutions before the commissioners today. Is there any other business that the commissioners would like to address while we're together?
see no hands, sir.
Thank you. Seeing none, members of the public, we appreciate your joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you the next time. I definitely appreciate all of the work that the staff put into preparing for this meeting and all of the engaging conversations that the commissioners and the staff had. I think we addressed some challenging issues that I am excited to have the opportunity to do something about because they've been challenging for quite a long time. And so it's exciting to me to see people rising to the challenge and doing something about it. Meanwhile, as a reminder, you can always report any concerns, any safety concerns through our website, wmsc.gov, through our social media channels, or by email. Our next public meeting will be on January the 20th, 2026. We appreciate you joining us today and look forward to seeing you next time. Hearing no further business,